So I spoke to this group a few years back about optimal living aging in place. And when I was asked this year to address the topic of optimal living, I had to say, well, what is that? What does that mean? And the answer was one that led me or came through some personal discovery. You know, optimal is creating the most desired or satisfactory outcome, whereas optimize, which seems to be a related word, means perfection. So I think what a point to keep in mind is that optimal living is not a pursuit of perfection necessarily, but it's a pursuit of satisfaction. It's finding that joy, it's finding your happiness. And so on that point of view, that's what this presentation is looking to do. So optimal living is achieved by balancing your lifestyle with your goals and your aspirations, what you want to do. And optimal living, you must recognize that where you live is integral to that happiness, which is a bit of a self-serving thing for an architect to say, but I do feel that way, that your environment does have an impact on your mental outlook and your happiness. So quality environments will contribute to your overall sense of well-being. So what is this thing that we call architecture? If you look to a suggestion of what the very first structure that may have ever been created, and this is Adam's house in paradise, obviously a conjecture, you know, is that architecture? Here's an Indian chickpea, same question. Is it architecture? Is that architecture? When that goes on steroids and looks something like that, does that make it architecture? Right. Are big box stores, are they architecture? Something as beautiful as Antebellum mansions, Monticello, the US Capitol, are these architecture? Are the pyramids architecture? Is the Louvre is architecture? So what is architecture? Well, architecture is, we call it many things, but for this talk, architecture is the stage for human existence. It's where we work, we live, we play. It's the buildings and the spaces between the buildings to set the stage for the things that we can do. And so that becomes a very personal experience for each of us. We go to and experience things separately. So I'd ask you what your story is, and we could have a conversation. And I would want to hear your story. And I'd want to hear what you think is important, what's important in your life, and what are things that are important for you to have out of life. It's a personal journey, and I'm going to be self-indulgent here for a moment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal story so you can understand my point of view. But recognizing that we are a product of our experiences and that our outlook then is a result of that. So my story. I came to Florida in 1965 as a 5-year-old child, came down from the north. I never considered myself a northerner until I moved to North Florida, which is an entirely different place, in which case I was immediately branded a damn Yankee. That's a Yankee that didn't go home. So we moved to Florida in a period of time that was just, it was an amazing landscape. I'm a 5-year-old kid. You know, the electronic age was just at its birth. The information age wasn't even talked about. Electronics in our house consisted of a 12-inch black and white television with aerials with aluminum foil to try to pick up the 2 stations from Miami that might happen to broadcast to Palm Beach County. We didn't spend our time inside, we spent it outside. And we went and explored and had fun. That's what kids should be able to do. But I lived in North Palm Beach County, which was a wilderness. Our blacktop stopped 100 yards past my house, and we could take that trail into and out into the wilderness, and we would go and we'd explore. Or I could turn the other way down the driveway and walk down to the end of our street to Lake Worth and have a landscape that looked something like that. So we were out, we were exploring nature and really finding out about ourselves. But in the 1960s, something also very important happened, and that was that the National Football League expanded the number of teams, and the Miami Dolphins came into existence, and what a glorious time to be a kid in Florida when your team was the world champions, never been matched, 17 straight, undefeated record stands today. What a great thing. We would spend our afternoons in the sandlot, playing and reenacting the last week's games. Great time to be a kid and a great place to do it. Looking the other way, looking up the coast, there were amazing people shooting people up into space and doing things that just stunned the world and had the entire world's attention on what was going on there. And that was happening in our backyard. So as a kid, my point of reference was the Florida environment and the things that were happening around me. And as a kid, outside the information age, where we weren't connected through smartphones and we didn't have email and we didn't have instant access to everything that we should, or as a parent I would say, shouldn't always have access to, these things that were happening at the same time in other parts of the nation, I wasn't aware of. So I wasn't aware of that. I didn't have older siblings, or we didn't have friends in the neighborhood who had sons that went off to war. So we weren't really aware of that. And so we lived a little bit of an ideal or insulated existence. But that's how I was brought up. And I really spent my Friday and Saturday afternoons hanging out at the local restaurant, having French fries and talking with friends and probably being annoying. But that was my point of view. I had a small town existence that happened to be in the east coast of Florida. Graduated, and I got accepted at the University of Florida. So I moved to North Florida. And it was what a college experience should be. It was a humanistic education, it had social sciences, it had math, it was a general education intermixed with architecture. But I really got into architecture. And architecture as a career choice and as an educational career choice is like a fraternity. You don't bother joining a fraternity or an architecture school. You spend your nights, your days, your weekends in the studio trying to learn this. And so we learned about the masters, the German masters like Mies van der Rohe and the American master Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier, who was French, and Gropius, and these were the people we learned from. And then we learned from the people that they taught, like Paul Rudolph. And we learned about architecture. We tried to apply those ideas to what we knew and what it was that created environments and what those environments should be. And as we learned more and our focus, our field of view broadened, we look at it, and here's another building by Rudolph. Completely different ideas about architecture than the one you saw just a moment ago, the umbrella house. And this ideas of architecture started moving away from the idea of what was human about architecture. The me and the we in architecture became about something else. The ideas about urbanism, and it was about kind of a conceptual idea of buildings in a landscape that really didn't have anything to do with people. And I don't know how to explain that, right? So that is where architecture was going at the time when I was in architecture school. And then this branch happened, and this is Pruitt-Igoe, and we all are aware that as a housing product, it was demolished shortly, really after a few years after it was moved into, because it was such a dehumanizing environment that it had to be blown up and taken away. So postmodernism, which went across the arts, entered into architecture. And we started learning that, maybe it's okay that we can look to history and we can learn good lessons from history and we can apply them to the things that we do. And so the last one by Venturi, this one by Michael Graves, another one by Graves, you see that the building's becoming even more and more and more involved. And to my way of thinking, well, there's a scale here and there's an intimacy that you can look at the buildings, you can sense, so that's the door, that's where I go in, there's a window, there's an office, or somebody in there looking at me like I'm looking back at them. It's beginning to become that grand social architecture again. I got disconnected. And I felt really that architecture was, to me, heading in the wrong direction. So, which leads me then to optimal living. So, what is optimal living? Well, let's ask this on a very personal scale, because we all do this. We all have a connection to architecture and it's our first introduction to architecture, is our house, where we grew up. And so what makes a house a home? A house is a building. A home is where there's connections there. There's a visceral, a familial, emotional connection to what makes a house a home. And I think to speak to what is optimal or making optimal living, we're trying to create environments, and we should try to strive to have environments where we are always at home. And that's why I think what our goal would be here. So in architecture school, they would tell us that this is a home. Well, that certainly didn't look like the house I grew up in. Right?
No.
And today, what's out there on the common market, these are homes. But again, this isn't in 1960 what I considered a home. I moved here from Levittown. That was home, right? That's what I thought. But I suspect that there's more than myself in the room, that that's the house that you grew up in, or you saw houses in your neighborhood that were very much like that. And so there's a world of difference there. And the slide was specifically selected because in addition to being just another building, it's a building with the family in front of it. And so my contention is that the people and the life experiences that happen in the architecture is what creates and takes us from being just a house and to make it a home. And so then the question then arises, and this came up when I was at the University of Florida. We were doing research, and we were saying, and kind of exploring this whole concept. And one of the things we were trying to do was to say, what makes architecture uniquely Southern? And so we started down a path, and we did research, and we conducted interviews, and through a variety of things. But one of the questions that came up was, does our background, if we happen to be a damn Yankee or we happen to be native born, do we have a different perception of what architecture is? Do we have a different perception about what makes a house a home? And so if you ask people, and you say, what is the Southern house? So many people will visualize a building like that. Yeah. And to build a mansion. And I'll come back to terror, because that's not terror. That 10% of Southern architecture was that. 90% of Southern architecture was that. So if you were asked a Southerner what home was, that's home. Right? We broadened our search beyond just looking at the physical environments, and we then explored in literature and music, with blues and jazz, and we looked to see what in these various art forms, what could we extract from that? And it gave us food for thought. And we came back to Gone with the Wind, and it was an excellent case study because Gone with the Wind came into popular culture in two forms. Margaret Mitchell wrote a novel which was wildly successful. David O. Selznick produced the big cinema blockbuster. And if you read carefully Margaret Mitchell's, it's a completely different story about the architecture and the physical environment of the South than what was shown in David O. Selznick. Because what Mitchell wrote about wouldn't sell. What she wrote about was that Scarlett O'Hara's family were dirt scratch farmers that had modest success. And at each time that they got a little more forward, moving forward economically, they would invest that. And so Tara was the plantation plain with a slap-down front. And Mitchell describes that very closely. But if you look at the David O. Selznick Grand Cinematic, it's that image that you saw previously. So people's perception of Tara from Gone with the Wind is most closely aligned to the David O. Selznick and not the Margaret Mitchell. So what came from that is that we concluded that yes, it is possible to, and yes, there is an impact of our backgrounds and experiences, what our perceptions are and what our expectations are of what makes a house a home and what expectations of what architecture should be. And so that led us to then trying to create some sort of summary. And the admitted goal of this research was we wanted to come up with a checklist. You know, like a building inspector would come out and say, roof, watertight, check, water heater works, check, faucets don't leak, check. We wanted a checklist. We never got there. What we got instead was we came to realize that what we were trying to describe was a tapestry, and that the home, the place for optimal living, was really a tapestry. And what we're trying to describe was a sense of place. And my sense of place is deeply rooted in my background. I've grown up and being able to walk to a lagoon that fed out to the Atlantic Ocean, that wasn't bulkheaded, that didn't have houses, and I didn't have to cut across somebody's yard, that I could walk the other way, get lost in the wilderness, which I was convinced as a 6-year-old had never been traversed by man before. But those were my experiences. So my sense of what is home is going to be different than yours. So what I had asked for you to do, when you think about your home, and then to a greater extent, when you think about Sarasota and what we can do to make Sarasota an optimal place to be, draw from your experiences, because we're all part of that tapestry. Not only is it about nature, and it's about buildings and the spaces between and the history, and it's about community, but it's about weaving each one of our threads together and making this place that's uniquely Sarasota. I thank Mr. Barwin for coming in and showing so many of the initiatives that were going on, because you can really get a sense of what, and the other presenters, what's going on in this community, which really kind of helps to support the notion that there's plenty going on, and find your place to join in and be part of that. So I thank you very much for your time.